This is CBC Vancouver News.
This has been so traumatizing for me.
Some families of the women murdered by serial killer Robert Pickton demand police continue to keep all evidence related to their loved ones' cases. Plus,
over 75 land defenders were arbitrarily arrested and detained solely for exercising their Indigenous rights.
Amnesty International says it's found evidence police and private security violated people's human rights during protests on Wet'suwet'en land. And
we certainly wouldn't want another family to go through this.
the mother of a Kelowna man who died in hospital is now suing doctors and the health authority, what she claims happened to him. Good evening, I'm Dan Burritt. Thank you for joining us. Do not get rid of the evidence. That is what some families of the women murdered by serial killer Robert Pickton are demanding from the RCMP. They want all evidence in their loved ones' cases to continue to be preserved. But as Leanne Young reports, Mounties say the evidence has been, quote, captured and will not affect future prosecutions. A warning for you, some viewers may find details in this story disturbing.
There's already no justice in Tanya's case because it's a state case.
Lorelei Williams was only 16 years old when her cousin Tanya Hollick went missing from Vancouver's downtown east side.
This has been so traumatizing for me. I never attended the trial for a reason, because I didn't want this trauma.
Her cousin, along with the remains of 32 other women, were found on Robert Pickton's pig farm. That grief dredged up again when Williams says she and other families found out from local advocates only days ago that the evidence might be destroyed. RCMP have been applying to the courts since at least 2020 to dispose of exhibits from the Pickton trial. Evidence like shoes, a pillowcase, sexual aids.
Why, in this case, are they trying to erase the evidence?
Sarah Jean DeVries' mother, who bears the same name, was among those whose remains were found on the farm. She, along with other victims' families and more than 40 groups advocating for missing murdered Indigenous women and girls, want it stopped. They fear the loss of physical evidence could jeopardize future cases.
This latest step by the RCMP to seek disposal of all exhibits, a mere 20 years after the investigation on the farm began, sends the message that the missing and murdered women's cases are closed, despite the majority of them being unsolved.
Pickton was found guilty in 2007 of 6 counts of second-degree murder in the deaths of 6 women. 20 additional first-degree murder charges against him were stayed because he was already serving the maximum sentence. That controversial decision was announced by the Attorney General at the time, Wally Opal. He later led the inquiry into the Pickton case, which found egregious police errors.
At some stage, you have to rely on the RCMP. All these years have gone by, and there hasn't been any other evidence pointing to any other offender. So I understand what they're trying to do here.
Opal says it's common for evidence to be eventually destroyed, especially when it seems unlikely to be used anytime soon in court. But still, victims' families like DeVries believe Pickton didn't act alone.
Every single person who brought a woman to that farm, anyone who was working on that farm, should be held accountable.
RCMP declined an interview, only sending a statement saying in part, all possible evidence has been captured and retained. The disposal of property would not affect any future prosecution. For these families, though, it's little reassurance after decades of broken trust. Leanne Young, CBC News, Vancouver.
Former Vancouver Park Board commissioners gathered tonight to show their displeasure at the mayor's plan to dissolve the elected board.
I think all of us that have served see the value in the Vancouver Park Board and the long history. Since 1890, we've had an elected board. And this decision has been made without a mandate. And in fact, the opposite was told residents in the last elections.
At least 10 former commissioners rallied outside the board's office ahead of tonight's meeting. It was the first since the mayor announced his plan to ask the province to amend the Vancouver Charter so council can do away with the elected board and run parks in the city itself. Several commissioners who left Sim's ABC party spoke against the plan.
I think what makes this board very powerful is it gives a voice to those in the community that often don't get a chance to speak. We have a lot of different neighborhood groups that really advocate hard for their parks.
A majority of commissioners later approved a motion to reaffirm their oath of office and tell staff not to reprioritize any work in light of the mayor's comments. That passed 4-3. The province has said it is up to Vancouver City Council, but it has not been specific about how any change may happen. Well, 2 people have been taken to hospital after a crash in Stanley Park that closed the Lions Gate Bridge for several hours earlier today. It happened in the Causeway around 3:30 p.m. Vancouver fire crews say they were working to free a trapped person from the car on its side there. Emergency Health Services says 2 people were taken to hospital, 1 in critical condition, the other stable. The Lions Gate Bridge was closed in both directions for much of the evening rush hour. It has since reopened. Well, as the holidays rev up, BC health officials are warning you it's also peak time for respiratory diseases like the flu. And as RCMP explains, the province says it is not too late for you to get vaccinated.
Not yet, but I will. This will be the first time I ever got it.
Glenn Finday says pre-COVID-19, a flu shot meant nothing to him. But as he ages and the reality of fast-spreading illness has kicked in over the years, he'll be lining up for that vaccine soon enough.
As I see some friends of mine that get the flu and they get really, really sick, eh? So, and I'm old, so.
He's one of the thousands Provincial Health Officer Dr. Bonnie Henry is hopeful will sign up for the shot, and soon.
Now is the time where we can take preventive measures to try and stop that peak. And you do this for yourself, for your friends, your family, your teammates, and for our community.
She says while COVID-19 tends to remain top of mind, it's cases of the flu and RSV that are both on the rise, while the rate of COVID-19 hospitalizations and deaths have actually been decreasing since October.
RSV is increasingly causing illness, especially in children.
The province says at least 1.4 million British Columbians have received a flu shot as of Sunday, but there's still a heavy weight on the healthcare system because of respiratory illness.
A continued period in the course of a week of 10,000 patients in our public healthcare system.
Not everyone, though, is eager to roll up their sleeves.
I grew up in one of those families where it's like, eat dirt and that's how you build your immune system,
But this doctor says with illness on the rise, some tough decisions might need to be made for the holidays.
Uncle John coming in from Toronto, standing at the door, coughing, saying that he feels better now that he's taken something for it. I think we really need to use Zoom for Uncle John again this year.
And a reminder to go back to the basics.
It's not hard to cover your cough or to stay home if you're sick. I encourage us all to think about doing that.
Henry says if you are hit with COVID-19 or the flu, delay your holiday gatherings, postpone the fun, and contain the illness. Zara Premji, CBC News, Vancouver.
Amnesty International has now released a new report on the protests on Wet'suwet'en land in our province. It says it found evidence police and private security forces violated the human rights of land defenders, claims the RCMP categorically denies. As Michelle Gassoub explains, the human rights group is now calling for police to leave that territory immediately.
Hey, come on, you're under arrest.
Get your hands off!
You're under arrest.
For 3 years, Wet'suwet'en land defenders have been going up against police and private security contractors, trying to prevent construction of the Coastal GasLink pipeline. Now, as the project wraps up, a new report tabled by Amnesty International describes the tactics used against them, saying their human rights were violated as police cracked down during 4 separate raids.
During these raids, the RCMP were equipped with semi-automatic weapons, helicopters, and dog units. Over 75 land defenders were arbitrarily arrested and detained solely for exercising their Indigenous rights.
The report is a result of a spring 2023 research mission, where Amnesty says it heard reports RCMP used aggressive intimidation and surveillance tactics and employed disproportionate force.
The unlawful surveillance and the criminalization of Wet'suwet'en land defenders were part of a concerted effort to remove them from their ancestral territory in order to allow the pipeline construction to proceed.
RCMP declined a request for an interview, but said arrests and enforcement actions are only undertaken once all other avenues to resolve the conflict have been exhausted. The rights of everyone involved, whether arrested or not, have been fully respected throughout these events. But those on the ground say that's not been their experience.
I don't know how many of you have been arrested and put in dog cages to be brought to jail, then put in front of judges in your underclothes. That's not what Canada is.
Amnesty is now calling for an immediate halt to construction and the withdrawal of police and private security forces from Wet'suwet'en territory.
This should never be normal anywhere, especially when Canada says we are such a free and democratic country and aren't we great? Come to our country, look how we treat our people.
Amnesty also met with officials from Coastal GasLink who say they operate within international human rights standards. Michelle Gassoub, CBC News, Vancouver.
More transit is coming for commuters in Surrey and Delta. A brand new ride will hit the streets starting January 2nd. Take a look. The R6 is Metro Vancouver's latest rapid bus route. It will run from Scott Road Station in Surrey down Scott Road to 72nd Avenue. It will then turn east before finishing its route at Newton Exchange. That new route will have stretch buses, enclosed shelters, and real-time bus arrival signs. TransLink says it's the biggest transit expansion since 2020. It is rare that a public hearing for a new housing project takes more than a day or two. But in the district of North Vancouver, they will be entering a fourth day of discussion this week. It centers on a potential social housing project. And as Justin McElroy explains, it's why some residents are not thrilled.
The district of North Vancouver. It has plenty of mountains, it's not the city of North Vancouver, and it has a public hearing that has been going on for a long time.
How come West Vancouver doesn't have anything like this? Everything comes to North Vancouver, but West Vancouver has zero.
That is just one person from the 3-day-long public hearing that's been happening in the district over a supportive housing site. It is proposed at the busy intersection of East Keith and Mountain Highway on a plot of land owned by the district. Now, the district says it would provide 65 studio apartment units and would be for people on the North Shore who are either homeless or at risk of becoming so. Now, part of the backlash stems from another supportive housing site on the North Shore that's had a fair amount of media attention. That's down at a former travel lodge, a facility run by the same society that would operate the Keith Road complex, Luma. But part of the backlash is similar to what we've seen at proposals for social housing across the region. Here's a sample compiled from just one of the 10 hours worth of the public hearing so far.
The location for this proposal is clearly not a good fit for the community.
Contribute to crime, drug use, garbage, parking, verbal abuse.
Proximity of this project to parklands, schools, daycares, and cannabis and liquor retailers is an added concern.
We are concerned about the risk this project poses on our safety, crime in the neighborhood, and our property values.
And the public hearing isn't even over yet. After 3 days, there are still more people waiting to speak. It might not be decided on until next year. But despite the large amount of backlash, it still might pass, in part because politicians in North Vancouver feel it's important to provide a greater diversity of housing. Here is a chart. It shows all of the supportive and emergency shelter spots for the homeless in Metro Vancouver. Now, the city of Vancouver itself has nearly 9,000 of those spaces, but the North Vancouvers, both the city and district combined, has just 120. Now, there are all sorts of reasons why the downtown east side has such a large portion of the region's most vulnerable people, but one of them is just how difficult it is to build supportive housing anywhere else. Justin McElroy, CBC News, Vancouver.
The National Council of Canadian Muslims is speaking out about an incident in Victoria last week that they are calling anti-Arab and Islamophobic. During a pro-Palestinian rally at the BC legislature, a driver swerved toward a protester. They claim he then yelled at an Arab man to, quote, go back to Jordan. A spokesperson for the National Council says confrontations like this are becoming all too common. He wants the government and police to do more to stop them.
We ask that the city to bolster security around protests and police to investigate this heinous attack on a student from our community here in British Columbia for what it clearly is, a hate-motivated crime. We also ask the city and the province to take action in protecting those exercising their right to peacefully protest.
Victoria Police say they're still looking into what happened and they have yet to recommend any charges. The mother of a Kelowna man who died in hospital is now suing doctors and the health authority. What she claims happened to him after the break. And hello to everyone watching our commercial-free live stream. Thanks for being here tonight. In the Kootenays, a Cranbrook woman claims she has been denied housing because of her service animal. And as our Corey Bullock explains, lawyers say that is a violation of BC's Tenancy Act.
For years, Chantel Briggs has been dreaming of getting a service dog. She was diagnosed with complex post-traumatic stress disorder and schizophrenic affective disorder when she was a teenager.
It's hard because I'll disassociate. And when I'm disassociated, I know that what I'm seeing isn't real, but I don't know what is real. And that's when the service dog would have came in.
She lives in Cranbrook in temporary housing. And in September, she learned she had been accepted for permanent housing through Pickton Housing Society. She was excited to sign the paperwork and get the keys until
I mentioned that I'm on the wait list for a service dog for complex PTSD, and they informed me that I would have to find housing elsewhere.
But as this tenant advocate explains, it's against the rules for the Housing Society to deny her housing because of a service animal.
The Residential Tenancy Act specifically states that landlords cannot put restrictions on pets if they are service animals.
He says it's also an infringement on human rights.
So specifically denying someone housing because of a disability is a pretty clear infringement of the Human Rights Code and discriminatory.
Pickton Housing Society sent a letter to CBC News explaining it could not comment on the matter, stating, quote, "We are unable to provide any comments or statements to the press regarding specific tenant or applicant matters." Patterson says it's tough to pursue legal action in this type of situation because no actual tenancy was formed.
Oftentimes for folks who are desperately looking for housing, doesn't necessarily make sense to jump right away into litigation if that litigation isn't going to get you what you need immediately, which is that housing.
And now Briggs is stuck wondering where she will live with just 6 months left on her current contract.
So I'm nervous, especially because housing doesn't come up fast enough. There's very limited housing in Cranbrook.
For now, she is thankful to have a roof over her head, hoping she won't have to choose between a home and a service dog. Corey Bullock, CBC News, Cranbrook.
The mother of a 36-year-old Kelowna man who died in hospital 2 years ago has now filed a medical malpractice lawsuit against doctors and the health authority. As Brady Strachan shows us, the lawsuit claims the man was left unchecked for several hours and allegedly died because of negligence.
Superman was always his favorite superhero.
For Allison Peace, the grief she feels over the loss of her son Michael is relentless. Michael Peace died 2 years ago this week in hospital. A devastating tragedy, she says, was due to negligence by staff at Vernon Jubilee Hospital.
We certainly wouldn't want another family to go through this. It's absolutely the worst agony I think a parent could possibly endure.
Michael Peace was a father of 2 young children and held a steady job in construction. His family says Michael had a long history of depression and addiction, but in 2021, he was seeing a therapist and attending Narcotics Anonymous meetings.
and he was doing really well. And then he had a relapse, and that's when he ended up being taken to the hospital.
Michael was admitted to the hospital suffering an overdose. Allison says initially she was shocked, but then hopeful he could get the help he needed.
I was relieved that he was being held under the Mental Health Act, because I thought, well, at least he can't just walk away, and we thought, okay, maybe he's finally going to get proper treatment.
That hope was short-lived. Allison says she got a call from the hospital in the middle of the night. Michael's condition had worsened, and he was in a coma.
And I screamed and said, what are you talking about?
Michael was transported to Kelowna General Hospital, but his condition continued to worsen, and the following day he died. Now, after 2 years of searching for answers, Allison Peace has filed a medical malpractice lawsuit against 4 physicians and the Interior Health Authority. In the lawsuit, Peace claims her son's death was caused or contributed to by the negligence of staff at the hospital. The lawsuit alleges a doctor prescribed Michael Peace Narcan or naloxone to reverse the effects of opioids, but the drug was not given to him. And the civil suit also claims a doctor ordered Michael Peace be checked on every 15 minutes, but nursing staff allegedly never checked on Peace for a period of about 6.5 hours until he was discovered unresponsive, having choked on his own vomit.
It should never have happened.
The allegations have not been proven in court, and the defendants have not yet filed a legal response. In a statement, Interior Health says it's sorry for the family's loss, but it says it can't comment on the matter while it's before the courts. Brady Strachan, CBC News, Kelowna.
There's a live shot of the Cambie Street Bridge in City Hall heading south. After the weekend snow comes a bit of rain for the south coast. Darius will have your BC-wide forecast right after this.
Juan Pablo Silva Perez, you are the new owner of a beautiful home on Munro Drive. Congratulations.
Honestly, when I got the ticket, I just kind of always thought about, especially because it's a hospice ticket, you know, always trying to help out a little bit. I went to Canadian Tire, I think it was, one day, and then I just saw the table, and I was like, oh man, and I think the lady already knew me, and she was like, JP, are you gonna buy one? And I was like, yeah, I'll buy one this year. You know, one of those Fridays where you just want to unwind, and I just met up with my friends, and we were being pretty nerdy and playing a board game, and I was the one setting it up, and I put my phone face down, and I was trying to, just hang out with my friends, and I look up at my phone, and I must have had, I don't know, like 60 missed calls, a ton of missed messages, and you know, my stomach dropped, and I just looked at my friend, and I was like, Mark, I think something really bad happened. And
After leaving a message, you can hang up. Hi, Juan. This is Donna Flood, the Executive Director of the Hospice Palliative Care Society. I'm hoping that you can give me a call. I've got some information for you that I think will make your weekend.
I called Sandra from Hospice because she's the one that messaged me, and because I still, you know, I saw my I don't know, I kept telling myself there's a scam, like there's no way that it's my ticket, and I called her, and you know, she started talking, and she was like, hey JP, you won. How does it feel to be the new hospice winner? Like, we're so happy for you. And she's talking, and I broke down on the other side of the phone. You know, I don't know, it was pretty emotional, and she's talking to me, and I didn't answer, obviously, because I'm trying to I couldn't even talk. The moment that I talked, I knew I was going to cry. And she's like, hello, JP, are you there? And all I could say was, I'm happy. And I broke down. And you know what's really funny? There was so many people trying to call me. Like, my whole siblings in Mexico knew before me. People that I didn't know added me on Facebook. They're trying to tell me, like, contractors that I used to work with when I was with the brew house as a general manager were trying to call me. And
how long was your phone off?
For about an hour and a half.
It wasn't even that long.
No, and when they called, so when I saw the posting of the video, or when they were calling, it was like maybe 3 minutes after I started playing the board game. So like, there was a good hour and 20 minutes where people were trying to get a hold of me, and I was just I don't know, I was just hanging out with a friend, playing a board game.
We're sharing really important information with the public, and I feel like this is exactly what our job is, especially as the public broadcaster, especially in morning radio. That's incredibly important.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell, and here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox.
For 37 years, British Columbians have been donating to food banks at CBC British Columbia's Food Bank Day, raising more than $18 million for food banks in BC. December 1st kicked off the annual charity drive and continues to the end of the month. We thank you for generously donating and supporting local communities in our province. Make the season kind and donate until December 31st at cbc.ca/foodbankday.
A host of sea lions made for a fun sight in the waters around downtown Vancouver today. Check this out. Several California sea lions were frolicking in Cole Harbour. The Vancouver Aquarium says the animals are always looking for new foraging spots in quiet waters, and they're seen in large numbers this time of year outside of their breeding season.
The weather update is brought to you by Direct Buy Furnace. To cool and clean the air in your home, call Direct Buy Furnace. Installing Trane, the most reliable heating and cooling brand.
Darius Madavi is here with our BC-wide weather forecast. The South Coast got through its first bout of snow. What's next?
We survived.
Indeed.
No more snow on the way soon, it seems at least. We not expected to get those winds that are blowing from the north and from the east that brought us that snow last time because of that cool interior and mountain air. Winds are back to blowing from the west, meaning we should be just getting rain as this next sort of stream of moisture makes its way down the coast. Now, if we layer on our pressure map, you can see this ridge that is still in place but breaking down over the next few days, which is why for now that rain is confined to the north and central coasts. But as that ridge recedes down, you can see all that precipitation start to push its way into the south coast. So by Wednesday, we will start to see some rain at North Island first, and then by Wednesday afternoon into evening is what it looks like right now. Vancouver will be getting that rain as well. So should still be a dry morning, but we'll update you if that changes, and then we'll see that push into the interior as some flurries. Now, we do have some weather watches and warnings in place for tomorrow evening. For the wind warning here, expected to get winds up to 100 kilometers per hour. And then for the air quality statement, still in place for this small area in the central interior, just because of some stagnant weather conditions that are locking in some particulate matter. So just be aware if you're in that area. Not like what we saw over the summer with the widespread air quality warnings, but still a good reminder that we should be keeping an eye out for that as well, even into the winter. Now, if we take a look, this is our wind map. You can see extremely high gusts coming for the north coast, particularly tomorrow evening and afternoon. And then as we get into Wednesday, another pretty strong amount of wind here and starting to make its way potentially down to the north coast. If we move forward, we can see in our accumulation map, plenty of snow coming across the province, most of it confined to the northwest for tomorrow, but then it starts to make its way down to the rest of the province. If we zoom in to the south coast, you can see a bit of rainfall coming, but nothing too serious, it seems so far, but that rain could continue into Thursday, and we'll see a little bit more accumulation. And then you can see plenty of sun and cloud across the province, the only excitement up there on the north and central coast for tomorrow. But if we take a look here, you can see that by the time we get into Wednesday and Thursday, we're going to have freezing levels low enough that we should see some snowfall on the North Shore mountain, on the local mountain, And then as we continue, we'll just see rain here in the rest of Vancouver. So a bit of a rainy forecast ahead, but it'll be easy to drive in than snow.
Very good. Thanks, Darius.
Thanks, Dan.
And that's your late news for Monday. Thank you for joining us tonight. For news anytime, check our website, cbc.ca/BC. Your next local news is on the early edition on CBC Radio 1. That starts tomorrow morning at 5:30. Good night.